Hi, I'm Scott Willison from the Confluence Fly Shop in Bellingham, Washington, and today we're going to tie an old standby. The woolly bugger obviously needs very little introduction. If you've been fly fishing for a while or just getting started out, you have probably heard of it, maybe even caught a lot of fish on it. Woolly buggers are interesting to me in that they're great fly, obviously they work, but everybody seems to tie them a little bit differently. So see them in all shapes and sizes. I'm not going to claim that this one is terribly original on my part, but this is the way that I like to tie them. I'm not a big fan of chenille-bodied woolly buggers, and so I like to use a dubbing on the woolly bugger. I also like to keep the bodies often on the thin side. I think they do a better job of imitating things like leeches or damselfly nymphs that are on the slender side. So we're going to tie one of my favorite color combinations today. This is the olive and orange, and we're just going to call this one the ice dub bugger. And we'll go ahead and get started. I have a size 10 Daiichi 1760 in the vise, and we're just starting some 6/0 olive dun uni thread. We'll get ourselves good thread base down on the hook, and then we're going to tie in some dark olive marabou for the tail. And I really like, you can kind of see on this feather that it's been worked over a little bit, but fairly fluffy fibers. That's what I like in my woolly bugger tails. They're just going to give you a little bit more movement than the fine wispy stuff is. And so we're going to get a good chunk of that. We just strip it off the stem and try to keep those tips somewhat even so that we don't need to do any kind of adjustments after the fact. So got myself a little plume of marabou. You'll notice I've already advanced my thread up to about an eye's width behind the hook eye. And we're actually going to tie this tail in up toward the hook eye. Right now I'm just measuring it against the hook shank. I want my tail to be about as long as the shank of the hook. And then as I'm wrapping back over it, I'm actually kind of lifting up on that tail, like straight up. And that helps ensure that it doesn't twist with the thread and migrate around to the wrong side of the hook. And then we'll trim that. I always kind of trim with my scissors at about a 45-degree angle going back. That's going to build a little bit of ramp there so I don't have a sudden gap that is going to make it difficult to finish the fly. Before our next step, I'm actually going to lift up that tail and we'll take a couple of thread wraps right underneath it just to sort of prop it up. That's going to help somewhat in preventing that tail from fouling around the hook. Now at this point you could add a little bit of Flashabou or Crystal Flash or something if you wanted to spruce up the fly. I sometimes do, but I kind of feel like on this one there's already some flash built into the body, so we're going to keep this one a little bit more subdued. And then for a rib, I'm actually using just this probably won't show up on the camera, but I've got a strand of just plain old 4X monofilament. I really like using monofilament over wire, because wire eventually, if it gets bitten into enough, it does eventually break. The mono is supple enough to where it tends to protect your hackle stem and make this fly last a little bit longer. And it also doesn't matter, it's not going to show up on the fly. So just a nice reinforcement. The next thing we've got is some olive brown ice dub. Really cool olive and brown mix with some kind of purplish UV fibers in there. And we're just going to twist this on the thread. And then start wrapping. I'll probably need to add maybe a touch more to this, but we'll see where this gets us. And with each few wraps, I'm kind of going in and retwisting it on the thread to make sure it hasn't loosened up. I don't mind building a little bit of taper into these where they're going to be slightly thicker up toward the head of the fly. Just a tiny bit more here. Alright, and then we've left a little bit of room at the head there so that we can get our hackle in and not be overcrowded. You'll notice I didn't add any weight to this fly. If you want a weighted one, you're free to add some lead-free wire wraps underneath. I'll sometimes tie these with a bead head as well, but I really like these unweighted versions, particularly when imitating a damsel nymph. You can swim these pretty close to the surface on a intermediate line or a hover line. They work really great fished in that upper water column. So now I've got a burnt orange dyed Grizzly Hackle. This is just off of a whiting bugger pack. Great source of hackling material. And I've kind of stripped away some of the longer fibers. I want to make sure my hackle's proportionate to this fly, so I don't want anything too long. And then you'll see this feather's got a natural curve to it here. I want to have that curve sweeping back, and we're actually going to kind of place the feather perpendicular to the hook here. And I actually tied that in. Here you can kind of see it with that view. Tied it in perpendicular to the hook there with the stem facing the other direction, and I just secured that with a few figure-8 wraps. Kind of same thing you'd use for tying in like lead eyes on a fly. That sets my hackle up to wind exactly the direction I want it to. A lot of times these hackle stems will kind of roll and migrate on you, and it's frustrating when you have an uncooperative hackle. So we set ourselves up for success, and then my next step is I'm just going to palmer this back to the tail and then reinforce it with that monofilament rib. So we'll get a couple wraps in here right at the head of the fly, and then I'll start spacing them out a little bit more. I want to get about 4 to 5 wraps of hackle on my fly. Now when we get back toward the end, we're going to very carefully pull this mono down. We'll go over the top and pull down. Once I have captured that feather tip with the mono, I can release the tension on it as long as I keep a firm grip on this mono. And then we'll wrap that right up to the eye of the hook. Get a couple wraps over it, and then we can trim that away and just get the tips of our scissors in there and trim that stem. I like to leave a little bit of feather sticking out, just so you avoid the possibility of it slipping out. And then I'm going to kind of sweep those fibers back. And then we are ready to get our whip finish in there. Nice, neat little head. We'll see if we can just get a little bit of UV resin on there to seal those thread wraps. While avoiding getting any resin in the eye of the hook. There we go. So we are all cured up. You can tie these in black, olive, brown, all sorts of various shades. The sky is the limit, but this is just a simple ice dub bugger, which I think is proven to be an indispensable fly to have on our local lakes and really still waters throughout the world. So definitely tie up a few when you get a chance. Find the materials for this and many other flies on our online store or in our physical store in Bellingham, Washington. Thanks for watching, and please be sure to like and subscribe for more content. We will see you in the shop or on the water.